did have an opportunity.
By the way, you're being recorded.
Somebody got to start over, man.
No, that's a threat for what I might say. Any rate, our chair had a conflict today, so I had forgotten that I was the vice chair, but I was reminded. So here I am, and look forward to a good discussion this afternoon with all the issues. And we got a good full agenda ahead of us here, so I won't take too long getting us started. First, just some rules of order, which I'm sure all of y'all have gotten used to with these people that we have to have out remotely, as we've done our Zoom meetings in the past. But now we're mostly here, but we do have members and public online. So I would just say, for those of you who are here, speak up so that you can be heard by the microphone. For those who are remote, keep your phone on mute when you're not talking. Don't put it on hold, because we don't want to hear any elevator music while you're doing that. But that's basically it. Just all the courtesy that we normally extend to each other while we're doing this. Okay, let's stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance, and I'll ask Cardi to lead us in the invocation.
Yes, sir. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for the opportunity for this gathering today. We ask your blessings on our proceedings and pray for safe travel home for all who are attending. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And Woody, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. Okay, as is customary for us, we will go around the table and identify ourselves as we get together here, and then I'll have Eldon recognize individuals, both members and public that are online. So I've already said I'm Emmett Hanger, Senator from Augusta County. We'll just go around this way.
Monica Gary, Supervisor in Stafford County.
John Gerlach, City Council, City of Fredericksburg.
Van Carney, Supervisor from the Stonewall Hawthorne District.
I'm James Manitz. I'm Senator Reeves' Legislative Director.
I'm Woody Henson from Westmoreland County Board of Supervisors.
Joseph Stepp, Hanover, Carolina, Soil and Water Conservation District Director.
Delegate Weber from the 18th, which welcome to it. This is actually the little city center of my district, so welcome and enjoy the sandwiches because it's really good.
Tom O'Halloran and Culpeper Soil and Water Conservation District.
Yeah, I'm Cardi Yao, Madison County Board of Supervisors.
Jillian Saul, Rappahannock River Basin Commission staff.
Alden James, also commission staff, and let me just a couple things to make people aware of with the way this room works before we go on to the other introductions. The speaker system is in the ceiling. It is really good. So watch your whispers to your neighbor. Because everything's recorded. That's number one. Number two, because of the way the room is set up, when our presenters are speaking from the podium, the folks online will not be able to see the presenter. They will see their presentation. But the way the camera in this room works, it's oriented towards this table and not towards the podium. We apologize for that. It's just one of the trade-offs.
Okay. All right, let's start over here then.
Hello, Brian Orrock, Spotsylvania County Utilities.
Brown, City of Fredericksburg. Mary Yuri, Spotsylvania County Utilities.
Harrison Bremen, Culpeper County Planning and Zoning.
Brian Hoffman, Prince of the Rappahannock and Rappahannock River Roundtable.
At Cody, Northern Virginia Conservation Trust.
Gary Rebecki, Director of Fauquier County Parks and Rec.
Lance Gregory, Virginia Department of Health. Jack McGovern, Fredericksburg Emergency Management.
Stephen Powell, Virginia Department of Emergency Management. Andy John, Virginia Department of Emergency Management.
Alexa Boggs, Virginia Department of Emergency Management.
Andy Johnston, Pat Foundation here.
Patrick Monty, Director of Rappahannock Regional Commission.
Chip Orles, Director for the George Washington Regional Commission.
Michelle Edwards, Rappahannock Regional Commission.
Uma Marcus with the Virginia Smart Community Desk Bed in Stafford County.
Very good. And of
And Delegate Rob Bell from Albemarle County.
You're important today. We established a quorum. Good. All right. Eldon, you want to pick up our members online? And
Yes, and I'll just call them out so folks don't have to come off of mute. Well, let's do it, start with members that are online. Delegate Bill Scott. Introduce yourself.
Yes, this is well, I'm his LA. I have a dash legislative. I'm his legislative aide, representing the office. Good to see y'all. We represent Spotsylvania, Stafford, Fauquier, and City of Fredericksburg.
Also online is Tommy Blackwell with Essex County, Commissioner of Revenue. Margaret Danneman with DEQ. Mikhail Manchester, did I get that right, with Stanford County? Okay, I'm gonna assume I got that right. Joe Wood with Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Michelle Biggs Phillips. Michelle, would you introduce yourself? Come off mute. Maybe. Okay, this is our world. There you go, Mr. Chairman.
okay, thank you. Thank everyone again for being here. We are being hosted by the Path Foundation here today, and Andy Johnson, who just introduced himself, is the Director of Program for the Path Foundation. So we'd like to give you an opportunity to make some remarks.
Thank you, Senator Hanger, and thank you, Ellen, for having us here. Me here today. On behalf of our President and CEO, Christy Connolly, and our team here, give you an welcome to the PATH Foundation. I'll be brief and just share a bit of background on PATH. We formed up in 2013 as part of the joint venture between our local charitable hospital, Fauquier Health, and Mike for-profit. So our mission out of that is pretty straightforward, to support the health and vitality of our community. That community, our footprint includes Fauquier, Culpeper, and Rappahannock County. We have 4 funding priorities. We focus on childhood wellness, mental health to include substance use issues, senior services, and more broadly, access to healthcare. Since 2013, we've invested, our website says $48 million today. Through grants, programs, and partnerships. I think even what we've done just in the last month or two, over 50 million that we've put in the community. We offer a broad range of support to our grant making, ranging from more than 3 million to help with low income and affordable housing initiatives across our footprint. We also do smaller grants, 10,000, 50,000, a lot of different, 50 different nonprofit groups. That includes groups that you all are familiar with. We've done our share of watershed support with Friends of the Rappahannock, Goose Creek Association, John Marshall Soil and Water Conservation District, and Piedmont Environmental Council. In addition to our grants, we support communities in many other ways. Across the hall here, we have a volunteer center that matches folks with volunteer interests, agencies that have volunteer needs. We also have our Community Link program, which probably can be helpful to you, Ellie Weber and others, in terms of those calls you get from folks that need help. We'll answer questions about health and human service needs through that Community Link line, try to connect people with the agencies and services that can help them. This space has been a huge, we've had countless meetings in here. It's hard to keep track of how much this space has been used, but it's free to our nonprofits, to our government agencies, and we keep a couple staff busy. I did want to just close this out really quickly with thank you to all of you all. I honestly didn't know a lot about this commission prior to getting asked to do this introduction yesterday. But when I went to the website and I saw that tagline, "Be river friendly, it's your backyard," This accent comes from southern West Virginia. I grew up right on the banks of the Guyandot River. Guyandot River was my backyard. I was permitted to play on that riverbank in the sixties and seventies, but one pediatrician in the community was also the family doctor. I got a typhoid booster every 6 months. In that middle class community, every bit of the sewage. So nowadays, it's back to a game fishery. It's a beautiful river. Everything on that river all the time. So, I thank you all, you elected officials, for your commitment to this type of work. You clearly understand the value, vital nature of our water resources. So I commend you on your work. You encourage me as a taxpayer and citizen. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate your hospitality here today. Yeah. All right, having established a quorum, I'll move on then with the first item of business, which would be the review and approval of our agenda. Is there a motion that the agenda be approved as distributed?
Second.
Motion properly supported. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And then in our consent agenda, we have 3 items. The work plan fiscal year 23. Eldon, do you have anything to say about that?
I just provided everybody with the update. We're about where we would normally be this point in the year. And if you have any questions on how it's distributed in advance of where we are at this point, early point in the year, please happy to try to answer.
Any questions? Is there a motion for approval? Motion properly supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed. All right. Then the minutes from our last meeting in Irvington down to Tides Inn have been distributed. Are there any corrections or additions?
So, Mr. Chair, I'll abstain on this vote because I was not in attendance.
Okay. Is there a motion for approval? Second.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. And you've also had distributed to you your fiscal year 23 year-to-date financial report. Eldon, you got any comments on that?
It's really exciting 2 months into the year.
Well, so we haven't spent all our money yet.
No, sir.
All right. All right. Yeah. As is typical as we begin the fiscal year, not a whole lot there's worth there. The you've had that presented to you previously for review. Is there a motion that be approved?
Move.
Motion. Second. Motion properly supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that is approved. All right, we have as is our custom, we put public comment pretty early in the agenda so people don't have time to think of a whole lot to say to us. So is anybody here from the public that came here to speak? Okay, if we really tick you off, you can talk later. All right, that'll be the way we'll proceed. But as far as that goes, anybody online? No, that's right. We're not taking online public comment.
We can.
We can.
We can.
Anybody online that was prepared to speak from the public? Okay, hearing none. Thanks all of y'all. And we will proceed then with our first item of discussion and presentation, which will be an update on middle and upper basin stream and rainfall gauges, which is something that's been a topic we've been working on for years. We've got here Stephen Powell from VDM, Jack McGovern from Fredericksburg Fire Department, and Mike Cannon from Stafford County. So who's taking the lead on that? You're up first.
Like it or not, Stephen. And while Stephen's going up there and Jillian's going to get the presentation set. This project, as Senator commented, we've been working on it a long time. It's had major disruptions along the way, not the least of which was a pandemic, but that wasn't the only issue. We're back on track. VDM is the overall lead, but because of the way things have happened over the years, Stafford County has taken a a lead role to do some things within their area. City of Fredericksburg has taken a lead role to do some things within their area. And so you really have the three working at the same time. And what we're going to see today is the coming together of those efforts. Edith's presentation really focuses more on upriver from the Fredericksburg Stafford area. And we also have some show and tell from Stafford when Mike gets up to do his presentation. And with that, Stephen, you should be good to go. Yep, you speak right into that.
Let me put the microphone there so I can put this.
They'll hear you. And just speak up for the folks in the room.
Good afternoon, everyone. How you doing? Quite good. Excited to be here. As Eldon said, my name is Stephen Powell. I work for the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. Also, we have a statewide footprint. And we're the IFO's program manager. So that mainly deals with early flood warning systems. It's heavy rainfall out west, or the tides are right in the east, combination of both. Our shop, I am the one full-time employee in our shop. That is as a statewide footprint. And growing our staff, I am staff member. Excited about the path to launch. On the pilot project that we're working with the Upper Basin Community. All right, as you can see here, these are the 4 counties that we are currently working with. We're looking to ascertain other needs in both the upper and middle, as Eldon alluded to earlier, both Stafford and Fredericksburg. Taking it upon themselves to build their own early flood system. We are all for being communities throughout the state. If they do have those resources, go ahead and just build out that footprint. I'll speak a little bit more about how that integrates with our operation. Some of the partners we're working with on this project, the National Weather Service out of Sterling, so that is in their service area, obviously Vision, the Army Corps, and also VDOT. I'll speak a little bit about VDOT. This also planning addresses the highest grade hazard in the mitigation plan. So across the board, flooding, rainfall, combination of both. They can help us address the highest rate. Mitigation. Familiar. Map would be. All right, just to kind of give you an example of what both a water level gauge looks like, as well as a rain gauge. So we took a site visit down to Region 6, which is kind of more southern, southwest Virginia, to the city of Danville. Similar to the city of Fredericksburg and Stafford County, they have taken it upon themselves to build out an early flood warning system just specific to their city. So this type of gauge right here that you see is attached to a bridge. So they go through permitting from VDOT bridge, you need that on that. So as you can see, it has a solar panel on the top part of it, and the arm going out, and then basically what that is that an ultrasonic beam that runs down to the water and measures the water level. This box that is attached to it is everything else from your battery, your data logger, cell service, everything is in that little box. So kind of back in the day, I kind of equated to technology. So back in the day, obviously your TVs weren't born, right? And huge TVs when I was growing up. Nowadays, I kind of equate flood equipment to flat screen TVs, a smaller footprint. As time is going on, it's gotten cheaper, but selling it, building it. Kind of an example of what it looks like. Like I said, it's just beams down to the water. Take that. This is an example of an optical rain gauge. So kind of same, similar-ish type of setup that we can attach it to something like a bridge or the top of a building, the fence, name it. So on the top of that, it has an optical sensor that measures the rainfall in different increments. Pretty simple layout, pretty simple and straightforward to the point. I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what this type of instruments look like. All right, so as Eldon alluded to as well earlier, this project has been 2013. I think it was, if I remember right.
So I came on at the end of April, beginning of May. This immediately became my priorities, because I like to get things done. Andy's the same way, Alexa's the same way. We like to knock things out. So we met with our local partners, Eldon, the Weather Service, USGS partners, saying, hey, how can we get this off the ground and get it going again? So we have some really good momentum going with these upper basin localities. These are some of the concept and goals of that. I'm not going to read through each one and everything, but basically this is going to enhance our early flood warning system for these upper basin localities. And as you can tell, like I said, Fredericksburg and Stafford have built out their capability, and I'll speak about a little bit about the lower basin a little bit. It's really going to enhance that on the ground remote technology, on the ground truth about what's happening in these counties. We're pretty excited to get this equipment out there eventually, but right now we are in that planning stage. This is kind of help us model that desired state of the statewide early flood warning system. So just to kind of give you an idea of where we're at right now. So historically, all of our other early flood warning system has been on the west side of the state, mainly from I-81 west, because it's mainly built out to help with flash flooding back in the 70s and 80s. We are looking to take it statewide now. Modernization standpoint. So we're going to put new technologies out there, new operations, new maintenance procedures. So this will give us kind of a good test bed, so to speak. So we're excited about. I'll speak a little bit more about Dr. Gage in a little bit. Kind of more of our responsibility. Obviously, the lessons learned in the fallback pilot project. One from our statewide efforts this time. That already put up. I'm sorry, I forgot.
I do not have the map interactive.
Okay. Yeah, the best way. So, we'll send the link out afterwards. But the 4 counties that we had mentioned earlier, Fauquier, Rappahannock, Madison, there are public safety officials in there, as well as the National Weather Service out of Sterling, to identify locations on the ground where we can best put this remote equipment. How is it going to help us monitor flooding, either upstream or at that particular location? So, like I said, I'll get this map sent out afterwards, but it is just a track list, but we feel pretty good about the locations that we're at right now. All right, some of the responsibilities I spoke about a few slides. Obviously, our responsibilities as an agency are on the left, and then the responsibilities of the localities. And we're going to look at a couple of different organizations. I just put the Friends of Rappahannock here just a little bit. I mentioned to you last time. So we're going to talk to you all about that as well. So obviously, we will have that site selection board, equipment, facilitate that Adopt a Gauge program. So Adopt a Gauge is implemented in other states and other localities. So this is a way for, because obviously I'm only one full-time staff. So this is an opportunity for these folks that are on the ground every day to kind of help keep an eye on that equipment, just to the basic level. Say, hey, make sure there's no vegetation growing around the equipment. Make sure it hasn't been run over by a bus. Those type of things, just that very basic level maintenance that you all can help us on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, we'll take care of the larger level maintenance issues. If it breaks, something like that, that'll fall into our hands. We'll do, once we do roll out the equipment and get it installed, we'll do training for all stakeholders. We'll take care of all the annual fees, any applicable permitting. I would say 99% of these sites are probably going to be on VDOT bridge. So we'll do the permitting through that. We'll take care of that, so you don't have to. And obviously coordinate in partnership with the National Weather Service to set different flood thresholds for these gauges. So that's when the water rises to different levels. We can set those and say, hey, we're going to think this is starting to flood, or we have minor flooding, we have moderate flooding, we have major flooding. So that's standard terminology that comes from the National Weather Service. So we're just going to stick to that. That's what we do best. We don't want to create our own system. We're just going to stick with those terms. Obviously, some of that we're going to look for feedback on different gauge sites. We're in the process of doing now. Participating in piloting that Adopt a Gauge program that I mentioned as well. Performance feedback, we take all of our feedback, good and bad. Assist in determining those flood thresholds, because obviously you all are on the ground. You've been in these communities for a long time, so you're going to understand how water impacts down to those street levels. Set those thresholds. And obviously provide us All right, benefits. This will give us a monetized local early flood warning system in your community. So that you can notify your resident, you can close roads, that type of deal. Having this real time, and you can empower yourselves to make decisions, whether that's from a public safety standpoint, instead of road closures, things like that. It also gives you historical data. So when we do have flooding, say, kind of in some areas, you can say, hey, the flood level got to 7 foot last time, and this is kind of what it looked like. I can say, hey, I can take a picture of that. You can kind of say, oh, this is kind of what we can expect this time. So it kind of gives you that positive PR for everyone involved. Pretty self-explanatory. Like I spoke about earlier, this will kind of get us, help us model the future, provide a proof of concept. Our agency leadership as well as state leadership, to justify future budget advancements. Because it's one thing to build the system, right? But we also want to maintain it so it lasts for 40, 50, 60 years. So we're not having to continually put Band-Aids on, not having to spend money on more maintenance. Because the more we keep up with it, short term, this equipment. Obviously, this provides a test bed to gain some of those lessons learned on a smaller scale before we implement our system on a large scale statewide. All right, the next step. So our staff met with NWS Sterling on Monday to review feedback. The applications that were submitted by the localities, for the most part, they were in agreement. We've got a few items. We're in the process of scheduling a meeting at Patrick Shop to review that feedback with the localities to ascertain any additional locations as well. We're gonna hopefully, once we get that nailed down, get some cost estimates, work with our procurement to draft either an IFB or an RFP. We'll start to get ahead of the game a little bit and kind of punt those draft locations to VDOT and say, hey, what do you think about these on these bridges? So we get at least some initial intel, whether we need to move, stay put. Also start drafting the adopted gauge agreements once we get a little bit further down that road as well. Also, two bullet points that I feel like that are important. They are at the end here. We're going to look at future expansion plans that fill in gaps in the lower basin of the Chesapeake, or excuse me, in the river as well as you head towards the bay. So we're excited about that because we do have some gaps down there. There's maybe, I think, like 2 NOAA gauges, but they're more on the bay. So we definitely have some gaps to fill in on the lower part of the basin. We're excited about that to move forward. To start looking at locations down there. We have some good bit of funding we need to spend. So that's one initiative. And the last bullet point here, this is kind of how we put all these efforts together. So at some point in the near future, what's called a hydro software platform. So this gives us a central location where we can plug in all of our state gauges that we own, as well as local gauges. So whether that's Stafford, whether that's Fredericksburg, whether that's Virginia Beach, whether that's Norfolk, that's Roanoke. That's a place where we can ingest all the data from all the gauges statewide so that we have them in one place. And then we're also able to populate that onto a map. So that's anybody from Joe Blow that lives in a neighborhood, to Andy, to me, supervisors, whoever it may be. Our end goal is to have a one-stop shop map that you can interact, that you can see a gauge from Southwest Virginia, Northern Virginia, down the coast. That way you're not having to go to 7 different websites to figure out what the water level is, how much rain has occurred in the last 24 hours, or it may be. So that hydro software platform is our key to plugging all these gauges into one place. So that's something that's a priority of ours as we move forward to procure. So that way we can ingest every gauge possible to this one system and populate those onto a map. So that's probably the exciting part. It's a little bit further down the road once we get past these pilots a little bit. But nonetheless, that's an exciting initiative. It's on our radar.
Okay, we're gonna shift gears to Stafford second, right? Right, yep, we're gonna do you next. And then we're gonna go to Jack with Fredericksburg, and then we're gonna open it up to questions. I think that'll be the best way to handle it, since this all builds on each other.
Thank you, Steve.
All right.
And got some technical help headed your way to change over the presentation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mike Cannon. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Stafford County. What do, the folks that are here, one of Marcus, the that's bad analyst who helps me manage our we're talking about the smart community test bed. Also, I just want to call out to provide the finish development support. Which is we're doing. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our test bed first, which is, go ahead. Oh, you can talk.
The mic actually is for the people who are remote. If you could just speak up just a little bit for us.
Sure, sorry. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our test bed, which is the Virginia Smart Community Test Bed. It's a public-private partnership. We have the state's nonprofit arm of Funds Innovation called the Virginia Innovation Partnership Corporation, Stafford County, and then a systems integrator, OST International, helping implement these technologies. We have about 40 use cases so far for the test bed. But one thing I want to stress is the test bed in Stafford is kind of a whole network of living laboratories that have been developed across the Commonwealth and even into North Carolina. It's getting a lot of attention both nationally and internationally, what we're doing. And like I said, we have about 40 use cases ranging from public safety, environment, and a whole series of other things. I won't go into all of these, but certainly on the flood side, Roanoke's been a big contributor, and obviously around ports and in the beach, it's been a big part too of things they're doing. So, but it touches on a whole lot of things from drones and air security to, like I said, environment, public safety, a whole lot of things. So the vision of the test bed, vision and purpose, I won't read all this right here, but key thing is it's a living laboratory that is used to demonstrate technologies and innovation that can be replicated to other communities across the Commonwealth and hopefully outside of Virginia as well. So think of it as a way to bring in some new technologies that can be tested, validated, and that can really serve the community, advance things you're doing in your communities. So I'll talk about one of our use cases today, which is our flood sensors. We are doing some other things with the weather too. We are about to be putting in some lightning sensors. These are made by a company called Fauquier weather and they can detect lightning across described area. We expect that will help recreation activities and other areas where we need to evacuate staff or the public and there's danger. With our flood sensor, this is been funded through essentially a grant Virginia Innovation Partnership Corporation received from the Department of Homeland Security, Science and Technology. So this is and someone in the back is going to pass around the flood sensor so you can actually touch and feel it. Sometimes hard to see from a picture to appreciate what these things look like. So essentially it's connectivity through 4G LTE, solar powered. It's mounted on a pole with a cable that provides the sensor that can then detect this is a dashboard like you see there, and you can deploy them essentially anywhere where you have 4G LTE. We're also working with VDM, so we hope, it's my understanding that all of the flood sensors are going to be tied to a central dashboard. Really appreciate the partnership there. all you're doing to encourage information sharing. And collaboration. I think there's a lot of time there. So there are about 140 flood centers. This doesn't add up to 140. Don't worry about that because there are some that are still being deployed. From what I understand, the IPC has received a total of 140. We have 14 of them that are deployed within Stafford County. We worked with our GIS department, floodplain data with a full series of experiences we to identify the best locations to place them. We're still learning as we go. We've had these deployed a little over a year now, and we are looking, to move them around as needed. Uma was actually out visiting all of them yesterday. The active city, so we can see, how they were doing, what kind of maintenance is needed, and that sort of thing. And what we also did was we developed some triggers for these. So when certain flood levels occurred, we would trigger different alerts, so that when we get a mild flood, it might go up with a level 1 type of trigger, and there are 3 levels of triggers we can program these to do, so that and we use these right now as email alerts that go out to our emergency management and other interested parties within the county. The goal of this is to then take us to the next level and ultimately their citizens. We are looking at an approach there too. This is an example of one of the floods into Road, which is the railroad underpass, and you can see that road's not very passable. This happened back in April, and it led to VDM and our emergency management folks to respond quickly, pull the road down, really avert safety issue. And you can see sometimes these floods really drop off very quickly. It makes me feel like a flash flood. It's about inch or so rain pass through very quickly, and you can see the flood level drops. But that's not the case for all of our floods. We also have ones that take for a much longer period of time, especially if it's tidal related. Supervisor Gary's neighborhood. With a road that becomes impassable, and it literally cuts off access to about 2,500 homes during floods. It used to be only 3/4 of an inch of rain to trigger that. Thanks to VDOT, I think we're on some mitigation that's changed this area of that response. We're also now working to put these along the Rappahannock. We have this use case we're looking at to support on Rappahannock to deploy these. That's an area where we have a lot of folks that go down and recreate in the summer months, and they don't use good judgment sometimes and get out in the water with the strong currents. And fire and rescue folks get involved, and unfortunately sometimes we have some keys to push it down to. So if there's any way we can improve early morning and make emergency management people aware. This is just another example of emails that come through. But as you can see, these are not something you want to just put there, which is citizens. Filter these and make them a much more user-friendly, understandable alert. The other location I was referring to is Quick Road, and if you can see, that's close to the Potomac. It's on Active Creek, which is an area that does flood. It's close to the Potomac. It's more of a wetland area, and you can see the flood levels in the last one here. These little red triangles show the alerts and what thresholds have been hit. This was a great example of how we were able to work with the Virginia Information Partnership Corporation and also with federal partners through security. There are about 140 of these, like I said, being deployed across the Commonwealth. These bring things much more affordable to communities. These can be purchased for about $5,000 a piece. And compared to what some of the much older iFlow technology, which tens of thousands of dollars. So some of our goals too are to integrate it with Waze, to be able to send alerts your citizen friendly way to and allow citizens to be able to sign up for these. Also trigger some warning signs like on Short Road, for example. On that road, some water spill, the flashing light saying double ahead. Put forward. And then like I said, working along with historic Port of Falmouth and looking for ways we can better track things along the route. That's essentially it. Any questions I guess specifically.
Okay.
If I may, I just wanted to add something. Thank you so much for that presentation. And I just wanted to add something that we didn't go too much into the Brook Road issue. I know you're smiling at me every time you mentioned it because it's a huge issue. For those of you who don't know, we've had massive flooding there and people, we even had a car catch fire one time. It was pretty intense, but now we're able to actually look at this data, and I think you'll be bringing it back soon to our board to make a better informed decision about what to do about the roads actually. So VDOT had done an upgrade to the road. We may be able to avoid doing an access road and save millions of dollars. So these sensors are very useful in many regards.
All right, thank you, Mike. Zach. Okay, now we're going to switch to the city of Fredericksburg. And yeah, and for the folks online, Jack is going to describe what you should be seeing, but he's interfacing with a different unit so he can do some real-time demonstration for the commission. And we apologize. We just don't have the technology within this room to interface with that machine. So Jack is going to interpret what you should be seeing verbally. And I'm sure he's thrilled with that assignment, but.
Thank you, members of the commission. What I'm hoping to do is just give you an idea of the end user on here. We've seen a lot of pictures, we've seen a lot of images in our presentations up here. For those of you online joining us through Zoom, I apologize for not being able to get this on your side of the screen, but maybe if needed, we can set up a separate Zoom session to where I can do a share screen and show you all of these things we were talking about. The city of Fredericksburg, when I was first made aware of these, I had just come into my position back in 2021, and it was kind of twofold. Number one, I serve in emergency management, and then number two, I'm also a diver for our dive team. So kind of makes it easy for installation in our area. One of the areas we identified we wanted to capture was a significant gap in flood gauges or water level gauges with the USGS gauge, as well as our iFlows gauge in the city of Fredericksburg. Currently, the iFlows gauge is transferred up to the Mid-Atlantic River Forecast Office up in Pennsylvania, and that's a predictable gauge. So we still have to go down and put eyes on our static gauge located at City Dock, and that's proven to be very reliable over the years. The other thing we've lost is the other thing that we were looking at is better predictability. We've had an adage over the years that anything upstream in the Rappahannock River Basin took anywhere from about 10 to 14 hours to make its way down to the city of Fredericksburg. So we did encounter a sunny day flood some time ago, back in the early 2000s, where we had quite a bit of rain up in the upper basin, the upper portion of the basin. And we ended up rescuing about, I want to say it was about 30 people off the river and 5 dogs when we didn't even get a drop of rain in the city. So that being said, we identified some significant gaps. One of those gaps is we have a gauge at Remington We have a USGS gauge off of River Road, and then there's nothing after that, other than the predictable gauge. We also didn't have anything. We have a public park in the city of Fredericksburg that you have to go across a ford to get to. We've responded to calls up in those areas where we just didn't have any idea of the water level that would be coming. So we identified 2 spots in the city of Fredericksburg. The first one is at Hazel Run, and that's just downstream of the park, and we've used that as a predictability gauge. We've had quite a bit of success since its implementation, where we have been able to make calls, and we've talked about some of the alerts that you can set and some of the thresholds you can set. Through experimentation, we have determined threshold levels for our Parks and Rec department to now close Alum Spring Park based off of a water gauge measurement at the Hazel Run site. One other area we've identified is farther upstream on Hazel Run, so we can get an idea of shutting down the park perhaps even sooner and trending watershed from Hazel Run into the Rappahannock. The next spot we have is up here at Riverfront Park. We've just invested quite a bit of money to have a nice riverfront park that's going to, it's got a dock down there. We've got indigenous grass in that area. It's a very nice park area where we're drawing many people and having many city events there. So what that gauge has now done at Riverfront Park is we can now say with certainty that there is a 4-foot difference from what we measure there to what we have down at City Dock. For example, I no longer have to go down to take flood level actions at City Dock and drive down there, knowing that we have not reached a flood level at that spot yet. And we did this again through trial and error, through validation, and driving down and putting eyes on the gauge. What that means is we would look at the gauge at Riverfront Park and then drive down to the City Dock, and we correlated and took pictures over the past year, and we can verify and validate, corroborate our findings. This helped out in a recent rainstorm to where we also had high tide, and it was a full moon high tide, so we had quite a bit of water coming into our area. Plus, as we know, we have blow-in, blowout tides in our area. And this portion of the Rappahannock at Riverfront Park is in a unique spot, being that from Route 1 downstream is considered the tidal Rappahannock, and then we have our source waters, so we're in that break area. And what that allowed us to do is, I'll pull up the Riverfront gauge part, and what you'll see is that trend of the tides. But we were able to predict with accuracy that we did not need to close down, or I'm sorry, we needed to take preventive action at City Dock because the tide was not going to decrease. We reached our low tide at a much higher level than what was anticipated. And we ended up shutting down City Dock in a preventive measure, and we were dead on accurate with it. We predicted at City Dock we would reach approximately 11.5 feet, and I think we were just shy of 11.5 feet the last time we made that decision. And that was based off of our gauge at Riverfront Park. So the way these work on the emergency management side is we pull up here. Now, you see, we have a picture up there. That picture is not accurate. That picture is not dated. These things being in public, they do have a camera attached to them. Some of the features that weren't passed around with the gauge is you have a long cable. There is a camera that can be affixed to it. We can set that camera to take pictures for historical data. What does 12 feet of water look like at City Dock? I don't know. We'll be able to track that over the years. What does 12 feet of water at City Dock look like at Riverfront Park? We can now correlate all these things for historical data over the years to take action. The reason we don't have an updated picture here is with these being out in the open, it doesn't matter what signage you put on it. It doesn't matter how much you tell people this is going to help them. They still don't want pictures being taken. When we went down to do our firmware update recently, the camera was clean cut right off of the post. So it's unfortunate. That's just the way things are in the public. Each camera, I will tell you, costs $483 to replace. So we're going through that right now, and I've made my recommendation that I can go down and take pictures on a periodic basis instead of having to get one taken over and over again, and that as a cost, adding in that cost. But I just want you to be aware that that picture is not accurate that you see up there. When we go to the dashboard list or go to the unit dashboard, it gets all of its power from the sun. So we have to make sure they are in an area. I told you we put in 2 of them. We put one at Hazel Run, we put one at Riverfront Park. Our next spot to give us a better gauge reading between Remington and the USGS gauge is we've been given permission to put one at the Blankenbaker property on the Spotsylvania side of the river between the, so that'll be what, just upstream of the US gauge, just downstream of the confluence with the Rapidan. So again, better warning, better predictability that we can send alerts to people. The alerts we have being sent right now come to myself and come to our Parks and Rec maintenance person so that we know when we have to shut down areas, shut down Riverfront Park and make notifications. I told you we see our tides down at the Riverfront Park area, and these are measured in inches. So yeah, we got to do a little bit of math, but we went on and correlated these with our tide forecast charts, and these are 100% accurate with the Fredericksburg gauge. So we've correlated our data, we've correlated our tides, and again, we have our depths alerts set at various levels so that we take action, but we don't create panic. You see, as we move down the list, these are all of the parameters that we can gain, that we can set. And then we can go back in. The nice thing for us with the dive team is it also helps us with responses, especially in cold water times, for how long we prolong a rescue effort. We know colder water, it's a higher level of survivability for people that do drown. And it can allow us to take action where maybe we wouldn't have taken action before. These are all of our signal strengths and battery voltage. I will say these units are very rugged. They are able to go underwater. So this is the camera right here that you see. And then the nice thing about this compared to the ultrasound that's used with the iFlows that was talked about earlier, this is a pressure sensor gauge. So this is mounted on the bottom of the river, which allows us 100% accuracy in our measurements. Now, if we don't have a dive team or we don't want to put people underneath, we can fudge some numbers in there or enter some numbers in there so that we get accurate readings. However, what we did with being a diver, you just hold this sensor on top after you plug it in. It's a smart sensor, it's a smart gauge. It goes through its own calibration process. Once I measure it at the top of the water, the deeper I take it down, the pressure that it recognizes corresponds to the depth. And the big question we get, well, how long does it take to do all this and correspond to get this data? Instantaneous. Once we set this, we were getting data immediately. So those are some of the nice features of it that we've come to find on the end user side from an emergency management perspective. I will show you an example of what it takes or what it means when you don't maintain these. And this is our unit dashboard in the city of Frederick at Hazel Run. And you can see our pictures. When I scroll down here, you can see our picture is covered with foliage. So those are some things you have to remember when you do install these gauges, is have a plan to go out and maintain them during the year. And while we don't think that 8 inches of water is all that much, it does mean a lot when it comes time to shutting down parks or making the call to shut down parks. So again, for us, the end user from an emergency management aspect, these IntelliSense gauges have provided us with real-time data that we can find, that we can now go in. We have one just downstream of the Port of Falmouth, I believe, and we can actually log into that as well. So we're going to be able now to gather flood data around the city of Fredericksburg area from City Dock all the way up to just downstream of the confluence, and we'll be able to correlate this flood monitoring with the USGS and NOAA gauges. Thank you all for your time, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Great. I guess we're opening it up for questions for 3 of our presenters now. Yes.
Yeah, John Gerlach, Fredericksburg City Council. FEMA uses the USGS data in preparing their flood maps. And the last iteration of flood maps FEMA did for city of Fredericksburg, they did not consider tidal effects. My question is, when we're talking about data sharing from these new sensors, are there any plans to share this data with FEMA? And if so, will FEMA be incorporating this data, or will they still only be looking at USGS gauges?
Anybody got an answer?
That's
to that?
probably a question we'll try to answer from the state side. As far as sharing information with FEMA, they'll have the same access that you all would to be able to see this real live. Our hope with the statewide dashboard is that it's also available to the public. So they'll have access to the data. We'd have to follow up with FEMA if they will actually use data that's provided by these sensors versus what USGS provides. I would assume based on work that's been done to install gauges at certain locations, the strategy that was put in to make sure locations were adequate, as well as tying them back to the hazard mitigation plans that each region has. I would assume they would use that data. We have to get that direct answer from FEMA, get back.
From a local side, we intend to work with this Councilman Gerlach. We intend to work with our planning commission and our stormwater management folks in making this data available, and they can provide this information. Whether FEMA decides to use it or VDM decides to use it, it is intended to be used for planning purposes.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, well, we've had a lot of information shared with, yes, go ahead.
Chair,
Oh, back here.
I'm curious if these sensors have the ability for multi-parameter probes, or so we could deploy it or collect additional data in addition to the flow and flood data.
Looking for CFS, like getting flow data.
The Songe at Knott's Run has 6 or 7 different parameters it collects live data on. And that's very, very useful if you're fishing, but also if you're planning on a recreational trip or a rescue, knowing the water temperature and things of that nature. And I didn't know from an ecological standpoint, if you're already putting this time and effort into going out and inspecting and maintaining the gauge, if you could also collect additional data for water quality.
I think eventually we want to maybe get with that point once we have more of a partnership, and because obviously our main lane deals with flooding. So that's my priority, right? So I need to get this early flood warning system into place. So I think once we do, probably a couple of years down the road, I've already had conversations with USGS, DEQ, that type of deal, that we want to create more of a all-inclusive network, I guess you could say. But I can tell you right now, my primary focus is going to be flood and everything that's flood related, it's like air temperature, that type of deal. But I think there is a desire at some point to create more of a synergy of efforts, I guess you could say, whether it's with BCR, DEQ, inclusive sensor that can kind of leverage those different things like water quality. But yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of our end goal way down the road, to get that more of a robust sensor. But I think right now, at least from our perspective, I think we're just trying to get the flood first, because we're not there yet. I want to get the flood and then we get. But yeah, I mean, I totally get what you're.
Sensor does have temperature, barometric pressure, and some other data that is there. One of the other things from a data sharing standpoint I wanted to mention too is this data is going up to the Commonwealth Data Trust, which is the state's central repository for information. It's mostly used for agencies to share information with each other, but it's also available to others, especially local governments and others that have a need through a whole governance model. So it's all up in the cloud. It's based on Amazon Web Services data lakes storage methodology.
What I've heard also in discussions with DHS is the next version of the sensor is going to have moisture detection in the ground, so that they are able to now predict mudslides. And so they're working on that version. These are pre-production sensors, so that is the next anticipated addition to the sensor line.
Okay. Just as an example, if I may, this is the river gauge just above Fredericksburg. This is from the NOAA website. And you can see we're showing our last observed value of 2.07 feet at 1 p.m. And if we ask our citizens out there to use this data for planning purposes or for trying to determine floods, this is the real time down at Riverfront Park right now in the city of Fredericksburg. And we're, 70 inches down there. So that's the depth of our gauge right there at 70 inches, just shy of it. So we're looking at it, 5 feet, a little more than, math is a little fuzzy today. So, but again, it's a whole lot of a different view from there. And it paints a much better picture, especially when dealing with tidal waters between 2 feet to call it 5.5 feet.
Okay, other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I guess I do have one. What sort of connectivity is needed to relay this data from these gauges? Because in Madison County, you go up through Graves Mill, you go up through Syria, you go up through Nethers. You're dead in the water as far as connectivity goes. I mean, how would these gauges get this data out?
So
That's a VDM question.
so that'll be, that'll be you and I.
Okay.
So yeah, one of our primary is LTE, but like you said, there's going to be areas that there's no signal, right? So we'll look at different telemetry methods, whether it be Iridium, Ghost satellite. So that's part of our evaluation process when we do these site visits.
Okay.
So that when we go out there and our cell phone says no go, then we'll go on to different options to help us relay that data.
One of the things you have to do if you're assessing a site is make sure you do it at this time of the year. Doing it in the fall time is not going to be beneficial. You do have to make sure that these gauges have access to sunlight at all times. They are able to get flooded. However, we try to elevate ours down at City Dock so that it doesn't get flooded. Just know that if it does get flooded and the water does go over it, if you have one of those high water floods, that it's okay. You're just not going to get the data because it can't transmit. But to go back to your question, we did exactly what the gentleman from Stafford said over here. We went out with our cell phones and it's like, nope, not a good spot. And I believe it's Verizon is the signal. So if you're using AT&T, you go out and go, yeah, 4 bars, let's put it up. Need somebody with a Verizon phone so you can make sure everything flows.
There's enough of battery storage in these to be able to tolerate several days of very little sunlight during a storm or something. So it is pretty resilient in that respect too.
In the year that we put ours in, we have not had one go dead. I can say that. Just had our firmware updates.
Energizer button. All right. All right, other questions? Well, thank all of y'all for presenting on this. As Eldon mentioned, this has been a topic of discussion that the commission has taken leadership role on a number of years now. Related to this, about 3 weeks ago, on the finance subcommittees that I'm on, we had a detailed presentation in Norfolk on resilience. And after it was over, I said, resilience to me is still kind of a squishy concept. It's a buzzword these days, but it's squishy. And what does it really mean? And developing in that conversation, we focus on the tidal, the coastline and all of that, but it's intended to be, to be a subject for us to deal with statewide. And so I started talking about soil and water conservation districts, the flood control dams and all of that. And then interestingly, Brian and I were at another meeting last week at Warrenton State Park, and there was a lady there who was talking about that very fact that she had a pot full of money, and it wasn't just all for the Hampton Roads area, that it could be perhaps used to fund some of the projects here that we're talking about. So I think Eldon may be going to line her up for December. Is that, y'all had that conversation yet?
We have not, but we will.
Got her contact.
Yeah, at any rate, it's someone, whether we have her on the agenda or whether we just, some of us meet with her and see, it appears there's some funding available, additional funding available, because that's always a concern with this technology. It comes with a price tag, and local government sometimes a hard strap to deploy these types of things. But at any rate, that's something we'll follow up on. Because it is, resilience isn't just, if we're going to talk about resilience, it just isn't for roads areas. Got to be prepared for weather patterns here in headwaters as well. Okay, we'll move on then to an update on our wastewater infrastructure policy working group. Lance?
Mr. Chairman,
Lance?
members of the committee, who appreciate the commission. Chief Jones, right here to speak.
She is the Director of Division of On-Site Sewage and Water, VDH.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to come back and speak with you. I came spoke to the commission back in December of last year and talked about the work of the wastewater infrastructure work group. And so that work group covered not just on-site sewage and septic systems, my division handles, but also public sewer. So I'm going to focus on the septic end, but be happy to follow up with our counterparts to provide some information on the sewer side. So the work group, the wastewater infrastructure work group, so this was created through legislation in 2001. And we met several times in 2001. There was a report that was submitted to the General Assembly in December of 2001. That was approved last year and talked about the things that we were going to be looking at working on in 2022. And those were research data needs, so trying to assess wastewater infrastructure needs throughout the Commonwealth, public education and proper maintenance. Good week happens to be Septic Smart Week, which is a EPA promotion. This is actually the 10th year that they've done it. We've put out magnets to our local health departments. We purchased 33,000 magnets through the grant program. And we found that those magnets are really great for getting out that information about, homeowners being septic smart, how to maintain their systems. Everybody needs a magnet to put a picture of the grandkid up on the refrigerator. So that works a lot better than, handing out a piece of paper or something like that. So please feel free to share information that you have there. And then the last part, and what I'm really going to focus on today is fully utilizing the existing resources, and that being financial resources, and trying to increase funding to help with wastewater infrastructure needs in the Commonwealth. And that's really been a big focus for the wastewater infrastructure work group and the agencies involved in 2022. And I'm going to talk to you a bit about the septic and well assistance program that we've been doing at the Department of Health. The work group, we've had 2 meetings thus far in 2022. We actually have our 3rd meeting is going to be next week on the 29th from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. We host that meeting at the Department of Health, but there is a virtual option for anybody that's interested in attending. So as I mentioned, we are really excited about our septic well program, with our SPOC program. So a big thank you to the members of our General Assembly. I believe had a quick note about this back last December in the special session last August to talk about how to expend the American Rescue Plan Act funding. There was $11.5 million allocated to the Department of Health for us to help homeowners with septic well repairs. And that was targeted at households at 200% below federal poverty guidelines. So to give you an idea what that is, for a family of 4, that's about $55,000 a year. For an individual, it's about $27,500 somewhere in there. Just to give you an idea of what that is. And we're looking at spending those funds through 2 different ways. The first is what we're calling direct projects, where homeowners would come into the local health department, apply for their septic permit or the well permit, and then also applied for assistance through the grant program. And then we have some grant coordinators that work directly with those owners, put those projects out for bid, work with the contractors, get them installed, and get folks reimbursed or get the contractors reimbursed. And then with the local partner projects, that's where we have planning district commissions, local governments, different groups could apply for up to $300,000 in funding, where we would give that money to them rather than BDH doing the projects in that area. We kind of back out of that area, just focus where we don't have local partners. And unless the local partners kind of handle the program at that. And the importance of this program, obviously, I think this commission's talked about it quite a bit in the past, the importance of septic systems, especially in rural communities. So we have over 1.1 million homes in Virginia that rely on a septic system. About half of those are more than 40 years old, which is exceeding life expectancy of the system. We have 700,000 homes that are served by private wells. So there's certainly a lot of need for the program. We expected there would be a lot of needs. I'll tell you, it even exceeded our expectations. So in February, we rolled out the direct project portion of the program, and we rolled it out to cover a number of different items. And this is where this funding has been so terrific. So we're able to pay for replacement of failing on-site sewage systems and septic systems, both conventional and alternative. That's really important because a lot of times when there's funding for septic systems in the Chesapeake Bay, it has to be a BMP, a best management practice. And those are sewer connections, septic pump outs, and installing alternative systems, but typically doesn't cover replacement of conventional systems. And 90% of the systems are still conventional. That's what most people need. So this really helps get money for those systems in addition to the alternatives. We're also using this funding for replacing straight pipe. And did preview to comment earlier from the gentleman about Southwest Virginia and historical issues there. It's not restricted to Southwest Virginia. There's certain straight pipes all over the state. Another great component of this is that it also included private wells. There's very little funding that's directed to that part of the equation. So private wells, as you'll see, have been a really big piece of this. So it allows us, if someone has a private well that's gone dry and have no water, or they have a water sample that shows it's contaminated, we're able to go in and replace those wells. We're also abandoning the underused wells because we don't want that to be ongoing potential public health hazard. We all hear those stories every now and then where a young child falls in a well, so we want to make sure those are abandoned properly, not left open. And then if sewer and water connection is available, if somebody has a failing well, a failing septic, and we can connect them to public water, public sewer, we're going to do that first. That's our best option. So to talk about kind of where this program went, so we opened it up in February. The ARPA funding, you have to have it allocated by December 31st of 2024 and expended by December 31st of 2026. So we had quite a while to expend that $11.5 million. We're happy to have that time frame. We thought it was going to take us. Well, it did not. We received so far 282 applications for well and septic projects across the state. As you can see on the board here, 55 of those projects have been within the Rappahannock River Basin area. And those projects, when we get a project in, before we actually contract with a installer to do that work, we provide an estimated cost for the project so we can kind of keep track and make sure we don't over allocate the funds, take too many applications. And with those applications, we estimate the installation cost will end up being about $6.5 million for those 82 projects. And then with the local partner projects, we've had 2 rounds of requests for applications to do that. The first round, the Middle Peninsula and Northern Neck planning districts both applied for that round of funding, so we'll be providing them with $600,000 between the two planning districts. Do that. Do a second round, we received another $600,000 in applications. So we have about $7.2 million that we estimate is spoken. So with that, we've put a halt on new applications because we want to make sure we get those projects all the way through to getting a bid, actually seeing what that real world cost is going to be, and so that we don't over allocate the grant. The costs have been coming in pretty high, like everything else in the world right now. Costs are going up, the septic and well projects, no exception. So we're having to work with that. Also with the housing market that we had when we first started, well drillers, septic contractors, they have enough work. They didn't need our help finding work. But we've worked with them, and over the last month or so, we've been able to put out about 50 awards just in the last month. So we've got a lot of contractors starting to come in. So again, we have 55 of these projects are within the Rappahannock River Basin, along with those two local partner projects that we have. Kind of breakdown, as I mentioned, having wells included was tremendous because that's actually been the majority of the requests that we've got within the base. Statewide, it's been about 60-40 septic and wells. Which you can see it's been tremendous. As far as kind of where we're at with those 55 projects in this area, so we have 4 of those that are completed, installed, contractor paid. We have 2 that are under construction. We have 12 where we've got a contract reporting, and then we've got 10 of those that are currently out for bid. So we're constantly moving these through and hope to have all of these 282 projects installed no later than early part of next. So again, really appreciate board members of the General Assembly and their support with that program. We're not going to need till 2026 to. And with that in mind, we've been looking for other potential sources of funding because we still have homeowners coming in that have need, and so we're trying to find ways that we can help those other families. So the SWAP local partner program is still something we can help with. Do have one final round of requests for applications closed in November of this year. And so we have $1.2 million allocated for that final round. So if there's any government, other groups that are interested in that, we're going to reach out. We've also been talking with the Department of Environmental Quality about some most effective basin funding that's come available today. The most effective basin funding is kind of limited in Virginia. So it's mostly the northern neck, some parts along the Potomac and Prince William County, and then it has some stretches in the Shenandoah Valley that we could use those. We're also looking at different infrastructure funding that's becoming available through EPA. And then lastly, as we talked about with the bill that created this wastewater infrastructure work group, that bill also allows VEH to use our state indemnification funds to pay for repairs of failing on-site systems. So that's another funding that we have available, and are looking at how we can roll that out once these other pots of funding that we're working with. Another aspect that I talked about the work group is looking at right now is assessing the infrastructure needs in the state. So we've been working with DEQ. There is a required wastewater infrastructure assessment we have to report to the General Assembly in 2023 as part of that work group. And then DEQ is also at the same time has a EPA needs assessment that they have to work on. So kind of doing 2 birds with 1 stone and trying to work those 2 together as much as possible. Also, as I noted, we've had to stop taking applications for the SWAP program at the moment. but we are still taking in owner interest form. So property owners that come in and say, hey, I still need assistance, collecting that information, populating that on a central office so that we can say, what that need is based on the direct homeowner involvement. And then lastly, looking at some additional data inputs into our wastewater data viewer that I think we talked about at the December meeting. That's a tool that VIMS has put together for VDH to look at mapping where septic failure hotspots are located. We received some additional funding that's passed through from DCR that's going to allow us. That mapping right now is just east of 95. And that additional pass-through funding from DCR is going to allow us to do that wastewater mapping and those hotspot analysis less than 95, so we can cover the whole state and better look at where there may be hotspots and wastewater infrastructure. Also wanted to provide a quick update on another piece of legislation from the past year. It's House Bill 769. This was a bill sponsored by Governor Hodges. And what that bill does is effective July 1st, not 2nd, will transition the septic tank pump out programs that are currently done by the local governments over to VDH oversight for the Three Rivers Health District and our Eastern Shore Health District. So that's the Northern Neck, Middle Peninsula, and Eastern Shore. And so we'll take those 12 counties over as far as sending out letters to homeowners and doing follow-up on those pump out requirements under the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act. We've got some additional staff that we're bringing on board for those local health departments to be able to implement that program. We also have to develop an online reporting tool so that the sewage haulers can have a way to easily report that data to the health departments, so homeowners aren't having to get a letter and then call somebody and then a lot of paperwork shuffling. And a key part to all of that is having an accurate inventory of where the systems are. And this also gets to the wastewater infrastructure work group and just understanding full scale of how many systems that we actually have out there. So our VDH, we have a database. We started in 2003. It has about 450,000 systems in it. So we have a pretty good data set on septic systems and private wells, but anything pre-2003 isn't necessarily in there. So still have hundreds of thousands of systems. So through a grant head through the CDC, we were working to do some hazard work for potential wells that may get inundated during a flood in the Eastern Shore, in the Northern Neck, Middle Peninsula area of the state. And as part of that, we were looking at real estate data, scraping real estate data off of those available websites, merging that with the data that we have in our database, to be able to provide a more complete inventory of systems. And so you can see this mapping tool that we have. It's for that hazards analysis, but we can pull that data from there that has that more complete inventory and use that to populate the work that we're trying to do with House Bill 769. So with that, that's those are the updates that I have. I'm happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Lance. Questions? Well, it's really good to see that you are seemingly effectively deploying that funding there to get that out there. Question? You must have covered it very well. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, our next topic, this acronym, are you supposed to say River E or Revere? Ecological. Revere? Revere, okay. And we have Dr. Bonk, Lori.
And she will be virtual.
Virtual,
And
okay.
Jillian's gonna make the switch for us.
Revere saying.
Okay, so I'll need access to share my screen, please.
Should be good to go, Lori. All right.
All right, can you see this okay?
We sure can, Laurie. Thank you for joining us.
All right, and let me just take care of one setting for my computer sound. And give me 1 second here. There we go. Okay, hi, everybody. It's nice to be here today. I'd like to first introduce our team from Revere. It's a nonprofit organization that I will introduce to you today. My name is Lori, and I would like to ask our team members from Revere to briefly turn on their videos so everyone can see your faces. Let's see if everyone's here. I figured I'd start by introducing our founder, Dr. Buck Cox. Buck, if you could just wave so they can see who you are.
Lori, if you're sharing your screen, we won't see any of the videos, so you'll have to unshare while we do this part.
Okay, actually, how about now?
Yes.
Okay, so Dr. Buck Cox, if you want to raise your hand, this is the founder of Revere. And then we have Michael Manchester, who is our Executive Director of Operations. And we have Michelle Phillips, who is our Creative Director. And Ava DeVita, who is our Research and Conservation Technician. So you are free to turn your videos off now if you'd like, and I will go ahead and go back to sharing my screen. All right. Share computer scan. Okay, so let me get started here. All right, so the plan for today's presentation is to start by showing you a futuristic video with concepts that are inspiring many aspects of Revere's vision. And then I will introduce Revere and tell you a little bit about who we are and what we aim to do. And then I will focus specifically on our plans to support research and technology through the development and collaboration and coordination of the Smart River concept on the Rappahannock, and the support and use and development of emerging technologies. And then I will end by telling you about our plans and intent to seek and invite opportunities for collaboration. So we're looking at a 20-minute presentation, and then I will open it up to questions. Okay, so I'm going to start by playing a video here, and I will narrate over top of it. So Eldon and Jillian, if there are any issues with sound, if you could please message me and let me know. I've turned the volume down to where I think it should need to be. So you all should, when I play the video, you should hear sound, the music, and then me speaking over it. So for context, about 5 years ago, I served, oh, and I meant to say I'm in Blacksburg, Virginia right now, zooming in. So for context, about 5 years ago, I served on Virginia Tech's visioning committee for the future of undergraduate education. And in part of that committee, we were looking at developing a new science lab facility on campus. This workshop I attended had a presentation by a representative from Smith Group Architecture, which they're developing part of the Virginia Tech Innovation Campus up in Northern Virginia. And they played this video asking us to consider the ways in which the future of higher education and science and the workplace will change given the rapid advances in technology. So they played this in video, which is from Microsoft, came out in 2015, imagining the possibilities. So I'll go ahead and press play. All right, so what you're seeing here is a scientist who is conducting applied underwater research with a kelp forest using technology that can collect and analyze samples, display that information on the screen, and share it live with an audience who, along the left-hand side here, can ask questions about what they're seeing. In this case, the audience is a classroom of children working in a classroom. Note the design of the space. Note the design of the space. So it's open, it's inviting, it's well suited for experiential learning in which students can engage with scientists live in the field using technology, using a space that is open and has natural light. So now the video shifts to a scene where the same scientist is traveling internationally, and she's able to, from anywhere, from a coffee shop, for example, use her device to connect to cloud-based storage and cloud-based computing to work on a research proposal that she is submitting to a corporation who is interested in her research and educational outreach efforts. So she uses her portable technology and cloud-based computing to communicate with a colleague, collaborate on the proposal, and then submit it while she's traveling internationally. Okay, so she has submitted her proposal, and now video shifts gears to the corporate office at Ocean Biosystems, where the director is preparing to review proposals. Again, note the design of the space. The office is open. It has a lot of natural light. Technology is integrated throughout the walls, throughout the windows, in ways that create an environment that's aesthetically appealing and very comfortable to work in. She's able to access these proposals on a computer display projection on her window and then seamlessly download the top proposals to her portable device. Now we switch gears back to our scientist who is still traveling internationally, out for dinner with her friends, and gets notification on her wrist device that she has been invited to join the project. So now she needs to get back to work. She goes online using her technology to book a co-working space at the nearest facility. Through her booking and her watch, she is able to access the co-working facility, sit down at one of the workstations, tap into her cloud-based storage and computing, and continue doing the work necessary to engage with the corporate team. So I will pause this now and continue on to the next slide, where we skip ahead in the same video to a scene showing the research center. So again, notice the design of the facility. It's open. Technology is integrated in creative ways. The board they're working on recognized who they were when they walked in, and it brought up the work that they were previously working on. It enables them to engage physically with the data, move it around, invite colleagues in remotely, and discuss the research. In this scene, they're taking a look at the data from the underwater kelp forest and recognizing that they're going to fall short of their yield projections. So the researcher sits down at another friendly workstation that has a hologram that enables her to interact with the data in the field, the parameters and devices in the field, to make necessary adjustments to ensure they can meet their goals. This data is transmitted directly to the field, uploaded into the portable devices, thrown into the river, where they go out and they make the necessary adjustments and data analysis in the kelp forest, send that back, and show that they're able to meet their needs. Okay, let's move on there. So I recognize that this feels like a very exciting futuristic video. Remember, this was from 2015. And I'd like to point out that a lot of these technologies now exist. Many aspects of these futuristic concepts are inspiring ideas that we have for Revere. So this includes flexible work options using cloud-based storage and computing, co-working space, portable technologies sharing real-time data across field sites, research and education, high-tech facilities that support collaboration in an applied research, technology, and education groups, and flexible, open, natural, interactive meeting and learning spaces. So let me introduce you to Revere. Revere is a nonprofit corporation that aims to serve as a regional and global magnet for watershed research, conservation, education, and ecoculture. And we'd like to do that by creating a world-class ecological center designed in form and function to attract and support and integrate scientific research into conservation, education, and public outreach. So the proposed location of our center is in Stafford County off of Kings Highway near the Duff McDuff Green Park. And so the area highlighted in yellow here, it's a 14-acre property that was acquired by the founder of Revere, formerly owned by University Mary Washington. We are in ongoing discussion with Stafford County about possibilities for using parts of the adjacent 60 acres for a proposed native botanical garden that we would work with the Potomac or Patawomac Native American tribe to integrate indigenous ecological knowledge and Western scientific knowledge into the design of those botanical gardens. And excitingly, we will be working with Smith Group Architecture, who inspired us to watch that video to begin with. They have agreed to work with us in the design of our facility as we move forward. So Revere is taking an entrepreneurial approach to creating an ecological center. We see ourselves as a host, as facilitators of supporting groups that are conducting research, education, technology, and ecoculture. And we would like to do this by providing a high-tech indoor and outdoor space, so laboratories and the native botanical gardens and direct access to the Rappahannock River, co-working memberships for flexibility, the opportunity for scientists to communicate their work to the public through art and exhibits that can attract an ecotourism base, and through the development and coordination of the Smart River concept, which will be the focus of the remainder of this talk. All of this will be couched in a commitment to economic, environmental, and social sustainability. I'd like to encourage you all to go to our website, reverecenter.org, to download our business plan if you'd like to learn more details about all of these aspects of what we envision. So now there are 2 pages on our website which focus on the support of research and technology, and I'll highlight a few here and then break them down into more detail. So first, we want to support research and technology simply by providing the space and by bringing people together. We are also looking at piloting, developing, and promoting the Smart River concept on the Rappahannock, which will enable us to support researchers and use and develop wireless smart sensor networks and involve artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data security. So our starting point was to form a research and conservation advisory board. So we now have that board, and we will have our kickoff meeting within the next month. But this is a well-rounded team of local and regional experts that will be asked to help us guide the development and direction of the Smart River concept, as well as the facility design. So I see that 2 of our advisory board members are at this meeting. So we have Joe Wood from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation attending online, and then Brian Hoffman is there live in person from Friends of the Rappahannock. We also have representatives from Virginia Cooperative Extension, U.S. Geological Survey, University Mary Washington, the Rappahannock River Basin Commission. So that's our 3rd one. That's Eldon, who's also there. And then members from Virginia Tech, which include Biological Systems Engineering, the Artificial Intelligence Assurance and Applications Lab, Center for Advanced Innovation in Agriculture, and the Smart Farm Innovation Network. So we have a really exciting group of people who are going to help move the concept forward. And again, our kickoff meeting will be within the next month. And what we will be asking of this team is to help define the Smart River concept, phases, and timeline, to identify emerging technologies that we can acquire and develop for use in the Smart River concept, recruit expert teams to develop research proposals to lay the foundation for the Smart River, and to advise us on research and technology aspects of the Revere facility. So why a Smart River? So with rapid increases in the scope and complexity of environmental pressures, it's starting to outpace our ability to keep up with these challenges using traditional water quality management techniques. And keeping up with these challenges is going to require increasing levels of big data and more complex predictive modeling. But recent advances in IoT technology and wireless sensor networks can help advance water quality monitoring by replacing traditional sampling methods with automated sensors that can report data real time in ways that are accessible to a variety of users, which you've already started to see some of this in our previous presentations today. But why the Rappahannock? So this is a map of the Rappahannock River watershed. Please note it's just a conceptual image. The placement of these icons representing sensors does not reflect where we plan on putting sensors. It's simply meant to convey that we envision strategically placing water quality sensors from the headwaters out to the bay so that we can capture the full scope of what's going on in the Rappahannock Smart River. So the Rappahannock has been described by researchers as being the Goldilocks River because it's just the right size. It's not too big to where we would be overwhelmed by issues when developing new technologies and new best management practices, but it is big enough that they can be genuinely challenged when testing and designing these technologies. Rapid growth is an issue. It's projected that this region is going to increase by 60% over the next 20 years, making it very important to be proactive about protecting the Rappahannock. But this challenge also presents a really exciting opportunity to use the Rappahannock River as a test bed to develop new technologies that can advance water quality monitoring. And so some of the technologies that we are interested in using are artificial intelligence, Internet of Things technology, and wireless sensor networks. So AI opens up all sorts of new avenues for environmental monitoring, and this has been acknowledged and integrated into the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. AI can be combined with Internet of Things, IoT technology, wireless sensor networks, and cloud-based computing to enhance progress towards sustainability. And they can enhance connectivity, access, and efficiency in sustainability initiatives. So just from a starting point here, I know that all of you have probably heard of and been aware and exposed to and understand aspects of IoT and smart cities. I'll provide some basic information. An IoT device is some sort of a device that has a unique internet protocol or IP address and the capacity to communicate directly to another device without having a human or a human computer interaction drive that. And a network of these connected devices can exchange continuous real-time data that can be used in many aspects of urban life to create a next generation intelligent system that can identify efficiencies and provide economic benefits that improve cities and communities. And a great example of this right now is the Smart Stafford Initiative and their development of the Smart Community Testbed. So a wireless sensor network has multiple components to it, but the first part here along the left is just the actual device. So you have a water quality device that's pulling in data. It's linked to a computational unit that then is processing the information and transmitting it through a wireless sensor network to the internet, to the cloud. Those data are processed and stored on the cloud and made available via a web portal or mobile computing devices to different users. Artificial intelligence can be integrated at any of these levels on the front end to be more efficient about where we place sensors, in the transmission process to ensure that there's data security, cybersecurity. Also on the back end here where there are big data needing to be made available for more complex predictive modeling. So our plans for the Smart River are to work with our advisory board to develop ideas for the types and locations of water quality sensors that would be used, to identify the types of sensors that can be developed. And we would like to have that be a collaboration with both the researchers who are experts in those disciplines and the Virginia Smart Community Testbed in Stafford. And we intend on coordinating closely with the Rappahannock River Basin Commission and with Virginia Department of Emergency Management to ensure that the water quality sensor plans that we have will complement the work that they are already doing with flood sensor work. So we are aware of the 2013 report by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that created a starting point for recommendations for where these flood gauges should be placed in the upper Rappahannock. And we are aware now of the updates to those proposed locations by Virginia Department of Emergency Management. This is a screenshot from their online GIS system. And our goal here today is simply to introduce ourselves to all of you so you know who we are, what we aim to do, and more importantly, to seek and invite collaborations so that we can build on each other's work, find efficiencies and synergies, and help all of us move forward in our shared goals to improve water quality monitoring and management on the Rappahannock and also in general. So my contact information is at the bottom of the screen here, along with our website, and you're welcome to reach out anytime. I am aware that these slides will be made available online, so I wanted to just simply note that references for the images in this presentation are also included on that last slide. So with that in mind, I'd like to go ahead and open this up for questions, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you. Questions from anyone?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead there, Mark.
I've heard this before, but not the way that it was presented today. I just want my full board to hear this presentation. This was really wonderful. So thank you for the work that you're doing. I'd love for them to see this.
May I ask who I'm speaking with, please? I can't see.
Gary from Stafford County.
Say that one more time.
Monica Gary from Stafford County.
Monica Gary. Okay, we will make that happen. Thank you.
Any other questions? More to come. More to come. Okay. Well, thank you, Doctor, for the presentation. It was a very excellent presentation. Kind of got my brain cells going here about what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
And certainly the aspects of it, which would lend itself to better water quality monitoring and quantity, would be very helpful. Work with not only the Rappahannock River Basin Commission, but the Chesapeake Bay Commission, and our modeling sometimes leaves a lot to be desired with what our goals should be, whether or not we're accomplishing. So hopefully what you're suggesting is you're going to be able to help with that a bit.
That's our goal.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all.
Okay. All right. Eldon, you're going to update us on the technical committee's work on solar facility development.
Okay, just a little more update from our last report and what you saw in the minutes from the last meeting. I refer everybody to the Rappahannock River Basin Commission's website. If you go to that website, you go to the technical committee's page, you can access all of the meetings that we've held this year, including recordings and all the meeting materials. The commission asked back in December of 21 that the technical committee investigate the topic of solar. And due to the wide variety of perspectives, I've given you this as a handout, so you have it as a takeaway. On the subject, I've spent some time with the chair talking during the winter about how we'd go about this. And the agreement was that we just go about receiving perspectives from all the different stakeholder groups. And we started out listening to representatives from local government, really through the planning districts, then from the ag community, key state agencies, then the conservation organizations, and an organization representing property rights called Energy Right Virginia. Then we also invited in Dr. Lee Daniels from Virginia Tech, who is a soils expert and mining expert, to talk about the implications of post-project reclamation and restoration. We have 4 presentations remaining and 3 meetings of the technical committee ahead of us. We've got the next meeting a week from today. And at that meeting, we'll be hearing from the commissioners of revenue in the basin and the state tax department on the impact on local revenues. And the General Assembly members well know that they've been dealing with legislation that have changed local taxation rules almost annually over the last half of a decade. And what the commissioners and tax department are going to be doing for the technical committee is, okay, what does all that mean? So that we can kind of summarize it for you. Then we will also be hearing from representatives of solar project developers, Dominion Energy, and the electric cooperatives. In an ideal world, we'll get through those 4 presentations in the next 2 meetings. That somewhat depends on, and we're coordinating with everybody. We're kind of set up to do that, but experience over the past year has told me that sometimes people doing the presentation schedules change, and so we have to adjust accordingly. We do have a meeting in November. What we would hope to be able to do is receive that information, turn out a draft report of what we've heard from all those different groups and where there is alignment, where there is overlap, where there is conflict or friction. I don't want to use the word as strong as conflict. Then any findings that are revealed from all those different perspectives. And it's interesting, the variety of perspectives from some of the individual groups. And if you go to the material that's posted online, you can see that. What we would do is put out a draft, circulate it to the presenter, circulate it to members of the technical committee, receive corrections, if we just didn't get that right from what somebody said, and comments, with the idea of presenting a final document to the commission. Again, in an ideal world, we would do that at our next meeting in December, but it may very well be the March 2023 meeting because we have a lot of data for you. And the idea was not to try to do some technical, scientific, economic study. It was to just invite all the different stakeholders who were involved in these projects and hear all their different points of view. What are the things that they're excited about? What are the things that really give them heartburn? And what are the suggestions they have? And what are the warnings or concerns that they have? And then what we'll be doing is compiling all that into some kind of coherent report. And we'll see. So that's it, Mr. Chairman. That's where we are at this point. Okay.
Any follow up with Eldon on that? Our next item was to get some thoughts, I guess, on maybe a legislative package or agenda from different members that might be already planning some things. For myself, I'm typically slow, so ask me in January and I might know what I'm going to be doing. But what mentioned Delegate Wright has joined us from down yonder. I know you had a meeting in Richmond as well, so thank you for making that extra effort to put in 2 meetings today.
Extra effort, you're welcome. I picked up a nail on the way up here.
You did? Oh my goodness. Okay.
I know. No
So wow, you really did go through a lot to get here, so thank you. Yeah, Dr. Rand and Delegate Bell and I were in Norfolk for a meeting yesterday evening late. So been making our rounds here.
Yeah.
And of course, Delegate Weaver, any of y'all have thoughts on or ideas you want to throw on the table? Elvin, have you accumulated any yet?
I'm slow too, and we usually just let Hodges take care of the water.
Yeah, Delegate Hodges, former chair of this commission, is very diligent about taking care of failed septic systems in the northern neck. So we got to
Just
make
ask,
sure.
just ask Lance.
Is that where all those projects are at?
Quite a few.
I'm sure that it's septic week. I had no idea.
Septic week?
I looked it up. Yeah,
Really?
it's the 10th anniversary.
Goodness. I got a question. What's the average charge for a pump out around the state?
Somewhere around 300.
Okay. Oh, we're good to go. Yeah, we're 250.
You're in a cute part of the state.
Putting every penny of that.
Speaking of Delegate Hodges, who can't be here because he has a joint commission on healthcare meeting at exactly the same time. And, that's on them. We set our meetings a year in advance, what can I say?
Priorities here.
He is working on a project and he anticipates some potential legislation, although it's not clearly defined at this point. He's working with a variety of folks on the problem faced by the growth of the blue catfish, which is an invasive species. And when they get really big, they're great prize, sport fishing fish. But when they're smaller, they consume, I couldn't hear. Can you try to? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. My computer's telling me I wasn't able to send something to the delegate who had to leave and wants to try to connect virtually. And when they're in the small to medium size, they consume huge quantities of crabs, clams, oysters, and it's become a problem in several of the tributaries. And so the discussions that are going on is how to create, there's a small and growing fishery for commercial production of the blue cat to try to control what it's doing to the other fisheries. And it is having a devastating effect on some of those other fisheries. And so what's going on is some discussions of whether there's some policy things the state can do to help support, probably some budget things to help support the growth of the fishery. It's kind of like the problem we had with the rays, a decade ago, where they were taking the oysters, the real young oysters out, and that the development of that ray fishery helped with that. So that's when this got put on the agenda and his plan to be here, he was going to talk a little bit about that. So I guess we'll be here for that.
Right.
I was just gonna, there's a federal legislative issue that is preventing that fishery and our local watermen from capitalizing on that. And that's currently addressed. There's a spot in our appropriations bill, Congressman Harris's office, to give us a temporary reprieve. USDA has to be the ones that inspect all these catfish, not FDA, which is what every other fish process is. So you have to pay federal overtime rates for those folks. And we're trying to solve that in the upcoming farm bill. But I know Hodges and a lot of the folks down there in coastal Virginia are working hard on trying to let those folks get back to work, process this fish.
That is right. That is one of the issues. The fact that USDA versus Food and Drug has to do those inspections, and it's most of your food processing facilities are inspected by Food and Drug Administration, not by USDA. And there's a limit of inspectors, and that's part of the problem in growing the fishery.
Yes, Woody?
Help me out, anybody in here that knows the answer. Is all of this headache, because I do know that catfish are eating up all the good things we like to eat in the river, both rivers, Potomac and the Rappahannock. But wasn't legislation put in, and maybe the gentleman that just spoke knows, wasn't really the legislation put in to protect the Louisiana catfish? And that's really what the holdup is, right? Is that the bottom line?
Yes, sir. In the 2018 Farm Bill, there was legislation put in to prevent an influx of Asian catfish that may not be inspected at the same rate that Americans like their catfish come in, and it's much cheaper, so it's protecting a domestic market, and it had an unintended consequence of impacting our watermen here in the Chesapeake Bay. And Abigail Spanberger was with us on Saturday, and she got an earful about this. And we're hoping she'll work on her subcommittee, natural resources, to try and update this Farm Bill for a permanent fix.
I hear from the local fishermen. And I'm hearing that the Louisiana law is what and the federal government passed that, Congress. So anyway, I'm not gonna say any more. Somebody might throw a rock at me, but I think I know where the problem is. Everybody else needs to find the problem there too. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we probably need to have some focus on the fisheries. That's something we have to do. Here's the fisheries, the Rappahannock.
Not for a few years.
Yeah.
And so I'll note that for future 2023 agendas.
Mike, any of y'all have anything to throw on the table now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think one item that will be of importance, maybe we can focus a bit on it at the December meeting, is an update on where we stand. We passed legislation and put funding in place for significant enhanced upgrade for our wastewater treatment facilities. So it's going to, between local and state, it's going to be about $1 billion effort. And of course, we have some of the federal infrastructure money, but costs are going up, and it's very important to this region because Fredericksburg was added to the list this past session, Colonial Beach, a couple others in this Rappahannock area. So we need to make sure that we are able to pay for those upgrades and get them done over the next 2 or 3 years. So, well, that's something we can focus on. Okay.
What would be the qualifications for being included in that list of necessary upgrades?
Well, I mean, it's a bit complicated, but I guess it's a discussion we need to have. If you've got one you need to upgrade.
I think we do. I think Madison does.
Okay,
Definitely.
hopefully we should talk about it.
All right, thank you.
Because it is, as expensive as it is cheaper to do it at point source than to put all the burden on the farmers and the local governments for stormwater. Yeah. Okay, other questions, comments on that? All right, we got another I guess short presentation on the canoe slide.
Yeah, an
access.
update. We heard about the canoe slide project at Riverside Park, 2 years ago. And Gary Respecting is here with us to give us an update. The project is finished. We've got everybody's got copies of the photos that Gary distributed, or everybody at the table, excuse me. And Jillian's going to call them up so we can see them on the screen. Gary's going to give us a quick update. And you see the asterisk at the end of his presentation. He's sticking around afterwards. And if anybody would like to go over and see the park and what they've done and the trails, he will lead a little visit over there. So just stick around and get with Gary after the meeting.
Welcome everybody to the town of Warrenton. My name's Gary Fauquier. I've been with Fauquier 4 years now. And prior to that, I worked with Prince William County. Board of Supervisors had put kayak canoe launches in part of their strategic plan. And during 2021, we finished kayak canoe launch here at Riverside Reserve. and shortly after. And we were also, during COVID, we were under government spending freeze and hiring freeze. So what we did is we reached out to the Friends of Rappahannock, who were involved in this before, John Marshall Soil Conservation, Piedmont Environmental Council, Division of Wildlife Resources. We combined all these resources in some county funds that I could muster up. And we worked together to build these kayak canoe launches. We would have access to the upper Rappahannock River. And doing so, we also won the Governor's Award for Environmental Excellence last year, Gold Medal Award. So it was a joint effort, and the Path Foundation also provided funding. So basically, Supervisor Butler and the lead district down there in Remington said this was the greatest achievement in town. He really loves that place. So Mary Lee McDaniel's supervisor here at Val and Reserve, and our since these went in fiscal year 20, we had 20,800 visitors to Riverside Preserve. And this past fiscal year, which ended in June, we went up to 36,754. So far in 2 months this year, we're up to almost 12,000. So we can't claim it's just the kayak canoe launches, because there's really not a great place to technically pull out of Riverside Preserve. There's a lot more places. Remington, you can go to Phelps, you can go to Kelly Sport. We have a lot of this information on our website. But the one thing we focus in the parks is, what does it do to the people coming to this site? We need Riverside Preserve like heaven. It's an unbelievable 200-acre parcel that was donated by Mr. Brad McDonald 2019. He upgraded to a bigger river and a bigger place. He kind of gave us scraps. And this site, what the Today Show had brought up is all the benefits about being around water. You're calmer, you're meditative. There's all kinds of mental health issues that everybody's facing these days, it seems like, and water seems to be one of the cures for this. So doing a lot of technical stuff here today, but I think we should also focus in on all the medical health and wellness benefits that water provides as well.
The next tab over, or
Yeah, that tab at the top.
Right here.
No, go back one.
the ones
There
that
you
are already open?
Oh, perfect. What is this?
That's the one you're in. There you go.
I'm sorry. This was the one I'm on.
Yep, they're all, you should all.
Okay, thanks. This is a map that we. This is a map of Riverside Preserve, about 8 miles from here. We have a one-way entrance in, got some parking. Here's our launch right here. We have a riparian ramble, we call it, that you can go along right around the river. Right here, you look up at Culpeper County, and it's very nice, several 100-foot cliff, and it's got all kinds of hemlock trees, native rhododendrons and mountain laurels and stuff. It's a bend in the river there. It's a perfect place to have to be in Michigan. It's very relaxing there, and it's probably one of the best sites in the county right here.
And we don't have to worry about technology issues.
So, just go fishing and swimming, and we got a series of trails here. And the one that's in white, we would like to expand over the winter with some volunteers. There's some incredible native plants there, some beech trees. We're also looking at naming opportunities as well for the trails down the road to help people with maintenance and creation trails in our park. So all our maps and stuff will be online.
Gary, where is this site relative to Remington?
think we're like 8.5 float or about 20-hour float. If you go out 211 towards Leeds Manor Road, Remington is Rector Tract property. If you take 29 all the way down south towards Muth, if you know where Muth Brew Ice Cream Shop is, very close to that. Thanks. This was the launch that we did when we did the grand opening this July of 2021. We had a lot of people there. We had a lot of volunteers also help build this. So there's some great pictures of railroad track, the railroad and the river right here as well. Got a little bit of a rapids there. We also worked with Smithsonian Institute where they're doing temperature logs for fish, both at Riverside and at Remington. So this is the second year they did it, and they're using that data to see when the fish spawn and what how the temperature affects their longevity. So there's a lot of environmental education that we're working on both in Riverside and Remington as well. And Friends of Rappahannock also do a camp, week-long camp at Riverside. We have a lot of wildflowers in the area near the water. We have a We Need Bees committee that Mark's Garden Club and Supervisor Fairley Daniel helped initiate. They made me the chairman, horticulturalist. So we're trying to create bee corridors everywhere as well. And then our wildflower meadows, we're having our high school students actually harvest the seed. They're gonna have art classes, design the seed packets. They're also gonna grow the seeds and sell at their plant sales instead of just selling the same stuff like petunias and everything else. So that we're gonna hopefully get people planting native wildflowers and trees in their own backyard. So we're all about environmental education and improving all the grounds so that we're not polluting the water that we have here. In your own street.
I think it's the first tab. Or maybe.
Yeah, that's from the bottom of the river up. Yeah, I think that's. One other thing, just to let everybody know, we did have our 50th anniversary as a Parks Department last Thursday. On our website, we do have a storybook, a digital storybook we put together. It shows a lot of the celebrations and other things that went through getting these kayak launches in. We have 50 years of history, interviews with people who helped build the parks, and all our old programming guides that were called Good Times. We still have them, and that's how the book sort of got created. I saw those in our libraries. It would be great to have in a book cover. And our GIS department put everything together. We also have a new GIS trails and maps. Really using a lot of technology right now with our GIS department. It's helping us out tremendously. So, like Eldon mentioned, if somebody wants to go out there today, or if you don't have time, you can go out anytime you want. I love being out there. So it's, if you have any questions, just let me know.
Okay, questions? Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. That's kind of on my way home. Might need to come back on another occasion. We're gonna be 2 weeks and gonna be up south of you there. We're gonna, we authorized in our budget this year, one of my favorite things to do is help sneak things into the budget, but we're gonna create a new state park at Randy Station. So it's gonna be a big deal.
For the tour, right?
Coming
up for the tour, right?
Yeah, gonna do that.
And then we're doing Bright Farms too. Well, that's in my.
Your district. Hey, that Randy Station is currently in my district. Hard to believe it. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, you and share that.
All right, any more questions for Gary of a serious nature? Actually, I'm excited that you get so many people there. That's a lot of people.
We're hoping to apply for a recreation grant through VDOT, so we can widen the entrance a little safer. And also provide an ADA kayak launch access as well. It's one we have now obviously isn't, but there's a real gentle way down there. Removing lots of basic plants and removing old farm equipment. So we're working with Clifton Institute as well to enhance the planting there. And if you're lucky, you'll see a bear or two.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
You're
Appreciate
welcome. Thank
you being here and sharing that project with us. That is great. The, okay, we've got, a look now at our future meetings. December the 7th, been the custom for a number of years now to have our Richmond meeting, not in Richmond because it's too complicated to be in Richmond, but at the State Fairgrounds. Right. And so that will be there, in Caroline County on December the 7th. And, Eldon, anything else to share about that or?
Well, the future agenda items that are identified in item 11 refer to the December 7 meeting. Mike Rolban, the new director of DEQ, will be with us. Terry Lasher and Chandler Van Voorst are going to be talking about update on healthy watershed forest. And obviously, I'm working with Brian Hoffman to talk about some money.
Flood preparedness.
Yes, that resiliency, flood preparedness funding potential. So we'll add that to the agenda in December. March meeting will be in March 23 being King George, then June 28th in Essex. That's Tommy Blackwell's neck of the woods. And then September the next year will be in Orange. And let me just add one thing before I finish. I mentioned Tommy Blackwell in Essex County. Thanks to him, he's Commissioner of Revenue in Essex County. He's taken a great interest in what we've been working on relative to solar. He is the one who's pulled together information, or is still pulling together information from all the commissioners up and down the basin, and working with Virginia Department of Taxation on the presentation that will be made to the technical committee next week. And his dedication to this project has been an extreme help to all of us.
Okay. And Cardi Della, we and I and other members of the Senate and House Agriculture Committees will be at Graves Mountain Lodge on October the 3rd and 4th for a meeting there. And that's what he was referring to, a tour that I think he's helping put together. So that's what we'll be doing. Any member have any additional comments to make or anything to share? Okay, I know it's been a long meeting, but a lot of information. Wait, were you going to say something else?
I was gonna ask, I got in a jam and didn't make the last meeting. How did the water withdrawal from the Rappahannock River work? Opinion here. 3 million gallons a day withdrawal out of the.
We didn't specifically talk about that as such. We were tied in and we had a number of presentations, but you talk agriculture use, what are you talking about? Or I know what you're talking about. You talking about paper mills?
Yeah.
Okay. No, we didn't talk about that.
We did not.
You want to talk about that in another meeting? Okay.
Wait for somebody better qualified than me.
Okay. All right. No further business. I declare the meeting adjourned.
You didn't have to change the time.
No, I didn't.
Other 95 until next time.
I was looking too happy.
Jack Brooke Matthews. In the beach. That, and I drove up to Graceville. Good friends live up there. It was unbelievable. It's
Only have a flat tire.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Wow, it's been really fun. You can drop by my house.
Are you really?
About 10. I'm south.